Hello, it's the 1st of September and although officially there's still another 3 weeks of summer to go, it definitely feels like autumn's on the way. After the success of getting the motor connected to the prop shaft and the prop and actually seeing it turn, I've turned my attention to making the permanent motor mount. I've spent rather longer than I wanted to doing the design on the FreeCAD package that I've got, and kind of went from really enjoying the process to really getting annoyed with it because the last few things seem to be really difficult to get right, and ended up having to redo a lot of what I'd already done. Anyway, having done that, my process is now do engineering drawings, so drawings that are marked up with the measurements, and make a prototype based on those drawings, and that allows me to check that I've got all the measurements right. So I did that yesterday and I started to cut out the top piece of the motor mount that I designed. Now today, thinking about it, I've decided to try a slightly different approach, so I'll show you that as we go through today. So this is where we've got to. So this is the top piece of the motor mount, based on the measurements that I created the design from. And it kind of works, but in thinking about it, I thought, well, it would be much easier to have a flat plate that was mounted on here, so I could have some bolts that are kind of set into these struts, and that will give me the height adjustment, and then these holes are quite big, so you've got a bit of forward and backward and side to side adjustment. And the thing is that then I don't have to get the dimensions anywhere near as precise, because all this has to do is overlap this. There has to be enough space for these. Whereas at the moment, what I'm doing is I'm creating a bend, which has to then fit precisely sort of on the edges of these, and that's where a lot of the problems are, because if you're using a thick material, the bend actually has to be quite rounded. You can't kind of do a 90-degree bend in thick material without having it, curved round. So I've got a piece of plywood here, and I'm going to cut it so that it fits into this space, and then I can put the motor on top and have a go at seeing whether this new approach is going to work. Okay, so this is where I've got to. One big plate, which may be in the metal version, doesn't need to go quite so far back, but I've left this extra bit of wood in for the strength for kind of this prototype. I've got bolts here which allow me to adjust the height of the motor. When I do it for real, what I'm going to do is I'll epoxy the heads of the bolts into this beam that's underneath, and then use nuts to adjust the height. Also, these are 8mm bolts. I'm going to use 10mm bolts in the real thing. It's just I don't have enough of them. The other thing I've been thinking about is I'm a bit worried about when the motor is going, it's going to be pushing the whole, basically it's pushing the boat forwards, and all the strain is going to come onto these 4 bolts. So while I was having a cup of tea, I thought of a solution, which is I will put an angle here of like 10mm thick stainless steel, bolted in with 2 bolts there, and have it tight against that. And what that should do is mean that the force is transferred onto this. So rather than being like this is a shear force on the bolts, it'll be if you think about what will happen is it will try and lift the angle up, and so it's because it's going to be bolted down, then you're actually going against the full strength of the bolts into here. So I think that that is a good solution, because the whole lot is easy to manufacture. There's no kind of critical tolerances that I need to specify, so it's going to be easier to get the design right, and yeah, I'm really happy with that now. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the little plastic wedges which are here to lock the flexible coupling, and just have a go at leveling it all up. Just make sure I've got all the heights right and everything, just to see if this concept works. Okay, so this is where we've got to. I put the wedges in order to stop the flexible coupling moving, and then I aligned the motor with the flexible coupling as best I could. In the end, the bolts that I had were too short, so I had to use these threaded rods that were left over from the battery mount, but I've got it roughly the right height now. I think I could get it precisely right, except there's a little bit too much flex in this plywood, so you can't quite get it right. So I've marked up the plywood, as you can see, in order to go back and then work on the CAD. So I'm going to produce a drawing of this, and then I'll use that drawing to actually cut this to size, just to make sure that it's all right, and then if everything is okay, then I will order. Hello, and you join us on what's turned out to be quite a nice day in the late summer in Scarborough. Yesterday I drew up my new design based on the plywood prototype that I've made. So what I am going to do today is to make a cardboard replica from the measurements on the design. This is the last test, and assuming that this is all okay, then I will press the button and order the parts. Here's the cardboard template. I've just put it on top of the plywood template. You can see that it fits pretty well. I've marked the bolt holes there, and they fit with the motor. It's all in place. It's actually going onto the flexible coupling quite well. So that, to me, looks like that's going to fit. So I think that I can go home now and actually order this part. Right, preparatory to getting the motor mount, I've spent some time cleaning under where the engine was, and that's the first coat of the Belgian locker paint. Looks really good, especially compared with either side. I mean, I should still be able to get at that after I put the motor in, so that can happen later, whereas the only way I'll get at this would be you know, to disassemble everything. So I thought I'd get on with that while I was waiting. This is the stuff that I use to clean the bottom of the boat. It's quite foul. You have to be quite careful with it, obviously wearing gloves and that. I think you need to use it in a well ventilated area. I must admit, I was considering putting my respirator on, but I just had all the windows open. That seemed to be okay, but certainly did the job of cleaning everything. The other thing that I've been doing is putting an insert in this little locker here. What that's for is the motor on-off switch, which is going to go in like that. So it's all glued in now. All I need to do is give it a bit of a sand down, a varnish, and we'll be good to go. A couple of coats of varnish and 4 screws, and that's another job that I can tick off the list. Hello, really exciting day today. The motor mount has arrived. It came from Factory, who's really excellent service. In fact, the guy phoned me up today to see whether it has arrived properly and whether it was what I wanted, and I am sure that any mistakes will be mine and mine alone. Anyway, without further ado, let's have a look at the motor mount and see if it's correct and start to put it into place. Here it is, and then these are the two things that I've designed for mounting at the back of the actual mount itself. And the idea is that these will take the thrust of the motor and transfer it to the boat, rather than all the thrust being borne by the bolts that are holding the mount in position. So the first thing to do is see whether this is the same as my cardboard template, which I produced earlier. Let's have a quick look. That looks pretty good to me. So that's one thing done. Now I'm just going to put it into position. Right, here's the motor and the plate roughly in position. You can see I've got the holes just about right there. This goes over the ribs correctly, and that's a kind of rough alignment with the prop shaft. The next thing I'm going to do is put the bolts in here temporarily and just do a rough alignment so that I know where I need to drill the holes. Okay, I've leveled it all up as best I can. Put the bolts into place and got it so that the motor was at the right height and the coupling would just slide together. And then I've marked the position of the bolt heads. So now what I need to do is drill holes in this in order to sink the bolt heads into there, and then I can put some thickened epoxy over the top, and that should give us enough strength in order to kind of hold the motor in place. So hopefully I'll get this right, but I suppose if I get it wrong I can just put thickened epoxy into the entire hole and then wait for it to dry and re-drill it. Let's hope I don't have to do that. Well, that was not an entirely successful day yesterday. I suppose I should count my blessings. The motor mount arrived on time. It's exactly the right size, the fit is good, and I got the first two holes drilled to sink the front two bolts into the ribs, so that was good. There is a problem with the rear motor mounts though, which I'll show you now. Here's the mounting plate, so if I just lift it out of the way, so there are the holes that I've drilled, which I'm going to sink the bolts into and epoxy them in for the front mounts. The rear ones, as you can see, I tried to drill them and not got very far at all. So I think what it is that under here is a metal plate that was used for the engine mounts for the old engine. So after lots of thinking about the different options, I think what I'm going to do is drill a 10mm hole through here and into the rib underneath, and then I will glue, well, I will convert the bolts into studs by sawing the head off, and I will glue them in place. I was thinking about cutting a screw thread, but I think gluing is fine. I've done some research into drilling holes in metal, and I've found four things. So first, there are drill bits that are better for drilling holes in metal than others. So I've got some not the best ones, which apparently are cobalt, but I've got some that hopefully will go through better. Second thing is lubrication. So I've got some oil, which I will drip in as I do it. Third thing is, rather than just drilling one hole, which is the diameter you want, drill a small hole and then a bigger one, then a bigger one. So I've bought a 3mm, a 6mm and a 10mm so that I can gradually make the hole larger. If necessary, I actually do have a 13mm. So if I find that the positioning's wrong, I can even drill a bigger hole than that. And then the fourth thing is that you use a slow speed. So you're trying to keep the heat down because the heat will dull the cutting edge on the drill bits. So slow speed and lubrication helps with that. And certainly I remember way back when I was a kid, I used to be really into metalwork. At school, you know, you would use a drill press to drill holes in metal. And they used to rotate pretty slowly, really. And they used to cut their way through rather than kind of pushing their way through the metal. So I'm going to give all of that a go now. Well, that worked an absolute treat. Got through really easily, and if you look closely at the bit, see this stuff here, this is swarf. So that shows that the drill is actually cutting through the metal rather than kind of like forcing its way through. So yeah, thanks to the website. I'll try and put a link on that gave me all of that advice. Hole number 2 drilled. The drill was a little bit more grabby than the first time, but certainly still went through very, very easily. So yep, now time for the last, the 10mm hole, and then I can get to work. So that's the first one done. Moving on to the second. There we go, everything's in place now. So I'm going to level this up, and then well, I think I need to clean the rear holes out because they'll be full of oil. So I think I've got some 8mm rod that I can wrap with rag, so get it nice and clean, or clean as possible. And then mix up some thickened epoxy and get it all in place. So that is what it looks like with the motor in place. So we're a bit close to the edge on there, but all in all, looking pretty good. So next thing to do, as I say, clean out these holes and then mix some thickened epoxy and get it in. Right, I'm all masked up, ready to mix my thickened epoxy. The thickener is really not very good for you, so I'd recommend that you do this every time you try and make it. So here is the thickened epoxy, good old peanut butter consistency, which I think is about right. Okay, there we go. I've got 5 to 6 hours now before the epoxy resin goes off. So I'm going to go and do some other stuff around the house, and I will see you in a short time. Morning. The summer is still hanging on. Last day of summer here in Scarborough. Still very sunny. Definite chill in the air though this morning. So the epoxy resin has had a day to go off. So let's see if I've mixed it right. Right. That looks pretty solid. As does that. And these look excellent. Okay. That's good. I'm now going to put the mounting plate back on and do a proper alignment, see if I can get it absolutely smooth and aligned properly. Okay, so got it all aligned, and just starting to do the final tightening of the bolts. First, I kind of got it aligned with these little things that go into the back of the Sigma drive, and they're supposed to keep it straight. And what I found in the end was that it's actually easier. There's two different things you have to do. One of them is that you've got to ensure that the drive shaft is aligned with the prop shaft. And then the second thing is that you want it so that it's straight. And what I found was it's a lot easier to see whether the drive shaft and the prop shaft are aligned with these out. Because what happens is that you slide the motor on and you can see it deflecting if the two are out of line. So I got it all lined up. Looks close as anything now, and I'm just going to tighten up all the bolts and see what happens. First thing to do is to tighten up these Allen bolts. What these do is that they pull the Sigma drive onto a wedge at the back. You've got to go through, there's 8 bolts, and you have to do them as kind of 2 crosses, if you know what I mean. Anyone who's changed a car wheel will know what I mean. And you're supposed to do that 3 times with the Allen key, and then you have to torque it up with the torque wrench. I had to buy a torque wrench specially to do this. Here's my new torque wrench, which has got these hex drivers on it. So I'm supposed to do it, I think it's 10, then 14, then 18. So this is the 10 now. Right, all the bolts are tightened up now. Unfortunately, I couldn't get these tightened up using the torque wrench, because I think you can probably see there's no way you're getting a socket on that. So you need one of those torque wrenches which has got kind of a spanner end, which I don't have. But I think that you know these are nylock nuts, and I've got it reasonably tight. I'll just check it after I've been running it for a bit. Tightened all this up. These ones here just need to attach the power now and give it a go. Unfortunately, I won't be able to run it for very long because the tide's out at the moment, and if I run it for too long, then the stuffing box will catch fire. So I'll need to wait till the tide comes in. Okay, cable's back on, motor on. Right, let's try forward. There we go. Sounds all right to me. Let's try reverse now. There it is, going in reverse. I better stop before the stuffing box heats up. Right, now the tide's in, I can actually do some proper trials. First thing I'm going to do is check that I'm getting some water dripping at the right kind of rate through the stuffing box. And I'm going to run it at slow speed for a while just to allow it to bed in. And I've also disconnected the mains just to get an idea of how long it will run on the battery. There we go, prop wash. Prop wash. I've run it for 1 minute, then 1.5 minutes, then 2 minutes. And I'm a little bit concerned that I'm not getting very many drips through the packing gland and the stuffing box, but I'm checking the temperature, and the prop shaft and the stuffing box itself are staying cool at the moment. I think that next time I can get down here at low tide, I'll check, because I think she's been in the water for so long I'm guessing that there's probably weed grown into the cutlass bearing. You do get a drip through the stuffing box during the night, so there is some water coming through there, so it's not completely blocked, but I just want to make sure that everything's working okay. So I'm now going to keep going, see if I can get up to 4 or 5 minutes with it staying nice and cool. I'm going to try alternating between forward and reverse as well. Let's go into reverse. See the prop wash there. Alison has a very pronounced kick to port when going in reverse, so as you can see, the wash does very much go to starboard. So running it in reverse for a bit, you can see that there's now definitely some water that's come through. That makes me feel a bit more confident. So I'll see if I can see how often the drips are coming when she's moving now. I've just torqued up the bolts. These ones seem to be fine, but the ones holding the motor onto the boat were a bit loose, so I've just torqued them up again, and I'm going to carry on with going forward and backwards and see if I can spot the drips coming out of the stuffing box. Well, there you go. The culmination of quite a lot of work. I've run the motor for 15-20 minutes now. Seems to be fine. It's a little bit rougher going in reverse than forward, so next high tide, no, next low tide where I get the chance, I'll just go and check that the prop is kind of fully on its taper, and next thing is going out. So it does look like there's a weather window on Saturday. I don't know if I'm going to be making that yet, but fingers crossed, maybe we'll be actually out in the bay here at Scarborough on Saturday. Let's see.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Do you want me to slip? Yeah, please.